So we have made it to the end of piecewise functions. So we've talked about evaluating piecewise functions, figuring out what equation to put it into, and then put it into the equation to find the answer. We talked about graphing piecewise functions, where we actually took the piecewise functions, created a table, look at the x values from the domain, and put it in and find the y values, and then graph it out with open and closed circles and all the good stuff. Done that. We've gone where we've given you the graph, and you actually had to create the piecewise function. So we've gone backwards there. And now we get to the word problems. And I love the word problems because this is real life situations of when you would actually see piecewise functions in life. And they are all around us, guys. It's what you see, what you realize, probably don't even realize is there, but it's always there. So with this, you already wrote down the word problems. So with this part, if you need to write the word problems down again, go ahead and hit pause when we get to the example, copy it down, and then hit play so we can continue on. All right, so let's move on to our it didn't want to go. Let's go to our example one. All right, so we have our example one here. And our goal here is we're trying to figure out what our goal is and everything. So let's go ahead and go through this. So it says, write a rule for a piecewise function that models the following situation. The data plan for a smartphone costs $35 for 5 gigabytes of data, and it costs $10 extra for each additional gigabyte of data used. So each gig above that 5 gigs, you're gonna have to pay money for it. Now, when I used to do this, when I used to have like the unlimited part, now I have like unlimited data and everything. But when I had the non one, I used to go over a lot, and then Verizon would tell me, "Oh, you have $15. You have to pay $15 for this next gig." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So if it went up for 2 gigs, that means I'm spending $30. Woo, that was too much. So with this part, let's go ahead and figure out this piecewise function, because again, it's stuff that you guys deal with, and most likely you're probably paying your own phone bill, so it means you have to figure out how this works so that you can make sure you don't pay too much, don't go over and actually pay more than that extra that baseline fee there. So hopefully you guys are on top of this and you know exactly what you're doing. All right, so with this part, let's go ahead and look at our goal. All right, so with this problem that says to write a rule of a piecewise function. So here we're going to be creating a piecewise function, which is the title of this whole lesson. But we're doing it from a word problem this time instead of the actual graph. All right, so we're creating that piecewise function. That's what I asked for. All right, so our next step is, okay, what information do we have? The information that we have, the info. All right, so let's take a look at that part. We're going to write it down. So we have two things going on here. Not that part yet. We have two things going on. So first off, you paid $35 flat for 5 gigs. It could be 5 gigs or less, but 5 gigs at least. All right. Then our other one says that we are going to we pay $10 extra for each additional gig. So that means if you go above your above those 5 gigs that you originally have, you're paying $10 for every gig that goes above it, which is a lot cheaper than what I had to pay with Verizon. It's like saying, but Verizon's cool though. I love Verizon because my signal is like amazing. All right, so with that, we have $35 for 5 gigs, and we have $10 extra for each additional gig. So we know here, when it comes to our first one, we're going to go ahead and create our equation. But we're going to let x equal the number of gigs. So we're going to talk about the number of gigs is for x. So when we write our equations, when we're talking about x, we're talking about the number of gigs that are there. All right, so with that being said, let's see if I can change my colors. Purple, yes, let's do purple. All right, so here for the first one, we've been talking about the types of functions that we've been dealing with. And so here we have a flat fee of $35, just flat, if you stay within your range of 5 gigs. Flat fee. So that means here we're showing a constant function here of $35. Stays flat, doesn't go up, doesn't go down. The bill stays the same. If X is less than or equal to 5. Because it could be 2 gigs and it's still within $35. It could be 1 gig that you use, $35. It could be 4 gigs. It could be 4.5 gigs and it's still $35. You get the 5 gigs, you're still 35, but after that, that's when you have to do other stuff. All right, so that takes care of our first one. Our second function here, it's like, okay, we have $35, that's that flat fee that you're going to pay. But then you went over. You went over those 5 gigs. You did 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, like however much you go over. Hopefully you don't go over that much. And so here, when we write this next part, we're going to talk about, okay, however amount it is, minus 5 is going to tell us how many gigs you went over. Because here, for example, let's say we have this. Not for example, we have this. So we say X is X minus 5. And I'm going to just do this really quick. You don't have to write this down. But if we say we did 6 gigs. So if we did 6 gigs here, that means 6 minus 5 is 1. So that means overall we went over 1 gig. So that means that's 1 times 10. So you do $10 plus the $35, which means you're paying $45. If you went over, let's say like 15, you went to 15 gigs, which means you went over 10 gigs there. So that means here you do 10 times 10, and that'll be $100 you're adding onto your bill. Whew, that's crazy. So make sure you keep a track of that part. Don't let that happen to you. So that's why we're doing the X minus 5. All right, so again with this, our condition is if, or our domain is if X is greater than 5. So anything bigger than 5 gives you that. Okay. So we have those 2, and that's the only 2 things that we need. So let's go and put this into a piecewise function, and then we are done, guys. So piecewise function graphs are really not bad. Piecewise function word problems, I should say, are not bad. The graphs take a little bit. So here we have $35 if X is less than or equal to 5. We have $35 plus $10 times however many gigs you went over if you go over 5 gigs. And that's it, guys. That's our piecewise function.